Shamo is a deadly manga. It's possibly my top 10 favorite manga of all time, which is saying a lot, because I'm not sure what are the other 9. The first chapter, displays in the mist, sets the tone for the rest of the story. It's grim and dark, the opposite of the protagonist's name, Ryo, a kanji that indicates brightness. His full name is Narushima Ryo, a 16-year-old boy who falls into the dark in the season of summer, descending to a somber path where light is the minority. He will be overshadowed, a sitting duck exposing himself too brightly when everything is at night. This story, however, contains no thriller or horror. It is in its essence a story about martial art, and the name Shamo literally means gamecock, chicken which are used for cockfighting. According to the manga, this name symbolizes Ryo's journey to becoming stronger as he fights harder. It sounds like a typical shonen setup, if it weren't for the fact that Ryo killed his parents and is put into the reformatory within the first chapter. Remember this, because this will be the cardinal sin for the rest of his life, something that others will always bring up in front of his face. It is safe to say this is not a manga for everyone. It touches on subjects that most refrain from. Aside from that, it also has a problem of continuity. At times, it feels like the story is chopped up and forgotten. This is most likely due to the fact that there was a copyright lawsuit in real life involving the 2 manga creators, Aido Hashimoto and Akio Tanaka, which significantly hindered the publications of the manga. But even with that in mind, I still read all its volume because no matter how the story fluctuates, it still successfully plays tricks on the idea of redemption. It invalidates a lot of traditional storytelling method that tends to make a character likable. And that's what makes this story so brilliant. I will not spoil everything in this video, so don't worry, but I will talk about the major plot points, mainly focusing on the first 16 volumes. So if you want to enjoy this blindly, now is your time to leave and come back later. Shamo is a manga that fully utilizes its medium to commit the rule of show, don't tell. Very seldom will the manga bogs you down with dialogue. The tension from the eyes and body posture is enough to deliver a sense of lingering threats. Its art style has a clear direction to strike the readers with a specific touch of poetic silence. And there's this one fight where Ryo brought up the piece Brahms Sonata for Piano and Violin in Re minor, number 3, opus 108. It is such a blatant message from the manga author telling us to listen to this piece while reading the fight scene. So I did. It was a perfect match to elevate the story to another level. And I believe during the process of creation, the manga authors, through conscious or unconscious decisions, overthrow a lot of preconceived tropes in fighting manga. To dive into that, I first need to ask you, what does it mean to fight? A reasonable response could be doing maximum amount of damage to your opponent. And yet, if we look at some actual tournament, it's not hard to see there are plenty of rules being implemented to reduce harm. The violent spectacle is formalized and rigidified to balance the antinomic belief in harm and protection. As a result, the seek for an unfiltered and unalterated fight will arouse the curious mind. This was the appeal of the early UFC fight. And this is the appeal of underground tournaments in fictional stories like Baki or Kengen Ashura. The fictional settings allow anything really to happen. It is intelligible to think if anything is allowed, then there's no rule. But this is where Shamo overturns such an idea. The perceptions of not having any rules becomes the new rules and civilize the fight. Because the true, unfiltered, unalterated fight does not happen when everything is allowed. It happens when there are rules, but you disregard them. In other words, you fight dirty when others fight clean. This is one of the major reasons why Ryo is so irredeemable and hated. He's willing to find loopholes by all means. To illustrate what I mean, we can look into this karate fight where he faces against the character Kakiyuchi. For Kakiyuchi, karate is a sport, a statement that puzzles the mind of Ryo. For Ryo, fighting is about survival, protection, and harm, which is why he subconsciously attacks Kakiyuchi's neck without thinking, a foul move that gets him a warning. Such serious mentality pushes him to win by making another foul move of breaking his opponent's bone while framing it as an accident. This kind of fight is the true uncensored combat because it exposes the facade of organized violence. Stories like Baki and Kengen Ashura might seem brutal in nature, but the brutality is within expectation. Audience inside the arena knows what they have signed up for. That is to say, the setting, the organizer, dictates the degree of violence before any feast is thrown. Hence, why we can see the audience hyping up every single fight. What Ryo is doing is to take away the power of the organizer and the audience and expose the true nature of fighting, a violent event where everything can happen. This is what it means to fight. When the audience, when the masses know the rules of clean versus clean, dirty versus dirty have been violated, they become mad because it reminds them that they are never in control in the first place. What's more, Shamo is the only martial arts story that I have read where the true battle doesn't happen inside the ring, but outside of it. The true nature of an ugly, dishonorable fight can be more than just a physical one. Ryo and his team will gather personal informations about his upcoming opponent, like the fighter's cheating wife or secret that the fighter doesn't want others to know in order to blackmail them. It's a dirty move certainly, but it fits with his fighting style. This brings us to the first point on why the story of Shamo is remarkably irredeemable. A lot of the time, Ryo's opponent are people who are known to be strong or have a reputable name. So when Ryo stands up against them, he should be seen as brave and courageous. He, in various ways, should be seen as an underdog of the story. Usually, a social outcast like this can get a lot of sympathy. An underdog who just tries to prove something in life. Just look at Naruto or My Hero Academia. And yet, the reason why Ryo is an underdog has a lot to do with his horrendous crime. And his style of fighting reminds the readers that an underdog is just an underdog. There's nothing otherwise that indicates why he should then be likable. A lot more can be said from the way he fights, but one thing is for sure, it is a style of tragedy. Kurokawa Kenji is the karate teacher who teaches this fighting style to Ryo inside the reformatory for the purpose of self-defense. He is the first one who introduces the world of martial arts to him. Just like Ryo, he is also a convict. He has the nickname Oni, which roughly means ghost or demon. He serves in prison due to his assassination attempt of the Prime Minister. Metaphorically, we can link things up like this. Kurokawa Kenji is a ghost who tries to kill the potential future of a nation. And Ryo kills the one who gave birth to his future. He is then apprehended to a place with no future. In this case, what is there for him to defend in a world where there is no brightness? This is why his way of fighting must be an unscrupulous one. So far, it seems the obvious reason why Ryo is so irredeemable is because he has been a troubling kid for his whole life, and his personality must be insufferable. This assumption is actually not true at all. It is briefly mentioned that before he committed his horrendous crime, he seems to have a decent life. And if his personality is only insufferable, then he will not have a team behind his back. One of his companions goes so far as to sacrifice his arm so that Ryo can enter his upcoming fight. In reality, his wicked personality only slowly starts to develop due to his traumatic experience inside the reformatory. He, in numerous fashions, reminds me of the character Griffith from Berserk. Both men live a decent life before things hit the fan. But surprisingly, both of them have similar tragic experience. They are both simultaneously an abuser and a victim in the story. If both of them have similar tragic experience, and once have people who are willing to sacrifice themselves for them, wouldn't it be sensible to assume they both steer similar sentiment in readers' mind? And there's this one small but focal idea that people always say from now and then. Griffith did nothing wrong. This is where the similarity of Griffith and Ryo ends, because Ryo was purposely designed to not be defended. Moreover, Griffith is not even the main character of Berserk. He doesn't constantly appear in the story, whereas Ryo is our main focus. So it's fascinating how the story maintains his flaw consistently across 34 volumes while making sure that he is not unlikable for the sake of being unlikable. His overall character development doesn't come from being a chaotic good anti-hero. He simply is a messed-up character who fails to step foot on either side of the spectrum. For instance, it's common to see characters go through extreme ordeals so that they can have a justifications for any bad deed that they did or will do. This concept can be seen in the movie There Will Be Blood and was explained perfectly by Tarantino.
But one of the things to take in is when Daniel Day-Lewis's character breaks his leg in the mine and finds the gold. Look at that the surrounding landscape around him, those rocks. It seems like he's out in the middle of nowhere. It doesn't show his journey back to town. But that journey back to town literally would be a movie unto itself, similar almost to the Richard Harris movie Man in the Wilderness. Because literally, he's got a broken leg. He would have to actually, through those rocks, have to drug himself by his elbows miles and miles through the roughest terrain you can imagine until he finally got to the town and actually sought medical care while having to actually leave the gold that he found. That's not a contrivance. That's not a misstep. Daniel Day-Lewis's performance so embodies the character that you can imagine he did just that. And also, as much of a bastard as this man proves himself to be, that courage that it would have taken to do that actually gives him the heroic right for almost everything that he does throughout the rest of the movie. He went through hell to get this fortune.
This concept is also not unheard of to the anime/manga world. Villain can change the brand name by showing them working really hard toward a single goal. So for a manga about fighting, it should be very easy to employ this kind of jail-free card to Ryo. And it would be wrong to say Ryo never put in any hard work. The way his facial expressions changes over time already entails what kind of formidable psychological change he must have gone through. So in order to obfuscate the reader's feelings from sympathizing too much with him, the manga did two things. The first one is basically similar to the previous point of fighting dirty. He uses any means necessary to be strong, which includes methods like doping. He can give people the impression that he is just finding shortcuts in life. The second one is, in my opinion, way more interesting, because normally it would not be a problem, and that is being too lucky. In one of his fights, he meets the strongest opponent he has ever encountered in his life. No matter what he does, it's just futile. He gets knocked down to the ground over and over and over. He thinks he's going to lose, or worse, being killed. Teetering on the brink of death, he watches fate twist. His opponent makes a critical mistake and shatters his own right hand, and that is just the first lucky sign. Subsequently, during the middle of the fight, he awakens his hidden memories and finally remembers he used to be left-handed. so he starts to punch hard with his weaker hand. Miraculous event like this happens in other fights too. A pivotal change that suddenly alters everything. Normally, it would not be a problem to suddenly gain power to one-punch your enemy, because usually the protagonist is likable. Audience doesn't want to see him or her lose. But in this case, Ryo is a morally ambiguous character. If he is always too lucky, then readers will be judgmental and have an excuse to think all his previous hard work is dismissible. In other words, redemptions and luck can never go hand in hand. A dishonorable man is bad. A lucky one, far worse. If Ryo can't be saved through his hardship, then maybe we can look from another angle. We can try to investigate why he chose to kill his parents, so that we can walk in his shoes. And in one part of the story, a reporter did exactly that. He tries to go back to the crime scene and interview people who knew Ryo. What he finds is a painting swallowed by dark ink, a piece of work that Ryo drew in 2nd grade. He takes this painting to Ryo's 2nd grade teacher for help. Despite her willingness to help, nothing can be said, because Ryo was the most puzzling student she ever had. There's always this miasmic aura meandering around when his past or parents are mentioned, a cul-de-sac that leads to nowhere. Most importantly, 99% of the time, we can only understand Ryo's family dynamic from his perspective. From his perspective, he vaguely suggested that his parents have driven him crazy with their teaching method, but no details are given. Not to mention, it doesn't take a genius to realize the murderer is probably not a reliable narrator. What the manga is doing reminds me the concept of Kuleshov effect. The Kuleshov effect demonstrates how different meaning can be derived from the same action through the manipulations of sequential information. Since the story of Shamo starts with the murder scenes, what information we get after the murder cases will affect how we judge the moral choices of Ryo. Take the painting as an example again. How could a 2nd grade child draw such a horrific painting if it wasn't the fact that his parents were abusive and put an immense amount of pressures on him? Or it could be he has always been an ungrateful child with hidden, dark, twisted fantasy. Both interpretations can land, since there's a deliberate intention to obscure his actual upbringing. After all, he, by definition, was always designed to be puzzling. So once again, he lost the chance to redeem himself and gain sympathy from the readers. But that doesn't mean there aren't any other story tricks to set things right. In one of the story arcs, Ryo finds himself fighting in some underground tournaments. This tournament is extra special because it takes place in China instead. No one knows how he got there. What we know is that he keeps on fighting and winning until a man with one arm shows up. People call him Son Goku. He plays Ryo like a toy. Ryo stands zero chance against him, and it would take a mysterious old man called Rushi to save him. Now, a story where a protagonist goes to a foreign land to fight a great enemy and meets a mysterious old man along the way is nothing new. This is called the hero's journey. I mean, the old man's name is literally called Rushi, which means teachers or master. Ryo has never had any role model in his life. By adding this archetype of a wise man, it can serve as a changing point to his outlook on life. Traditionally speaking, it is done so when the old master poses a difficult question to the protagonist. And the answer to this question usually requires some deep introspection. But it is Shamo that we are talking about here. The manga, of course, would like to subvert our expectation. For example, when the old master teaches Kung Fu to Ryo inside the deep mountain, he tells Ryo that there is this thing called the Book of Mystery under the Sublime Rock. It contains secret techniques that no one has ever seen, and Ryo is permitted to chisel the rock to retrieve this hidden knowledge. The only thing is, Ryo thinks there should be a quicker way to do it. He should use dynamite instead. Thus, the Book of Mystery turns into ashes. In any other circumstances, if the protagonist uses his or her wit to solve a conundrum, he or she will be rewarded. But Ryo is not your other circumstances. He is the murderer of his family. If he has the dignity to respect the training process and take no shortcut, then he will become a bit too likable. A bit too much like a typical shonen character. Now, it's almost the end of the video, and I have been avoiding the most obvious method for any character to redeem oneself: fighting the bad guys. Wouldn't fighting a villain make you a hero? In my opinion, Shamo tries to answer this dilemma head-on in my favorite arc, the China Arc. It really showcases why Shamo deserves the praise for its brilliant setup. Remember Son Goku? Apparently, he's the exact opposite of any previous characters that Ryo had fought before. People who fought against Ryo usually are men with decent lives. Sure, there might be one or two scoundrels here or there, but the most exciting fights always involve people who have principle or nobility. It's very different from Goku. There's this shadowy aura around him. Not only is he the strongest opponent Ryo has ever met, but also he looks directly into Ryo's eyes and says the phrase, "Parent killer." He asks, what was it like when Ryo stabbed them? How was it, penetrating their flesh and tearing off their skin? There must have been a bone in your way, no? A lot of blood must have spurted out and trickled on the floor. Fresh and warm blood, the same that is in your vein. Some parents kill their children, but sometimes the children are the murderers. All this is completely in harmony with the law of nature. This is what it feels like to fight Goku, an ominous figure who seeks your darkest secret. Surprisingly, his primary purpose here is not to fight, but to invite. He wants Ryo to join him to do human trafficking, to sell drugs, to control the underworld. Then the panel shows, no matter how hard Ryo struggles, Goku will always be on his back. It is as if they are actually two sides of the same coin. In actuality, Goku's offer makes sense. Ryo, as a former convict, as someone who lacks moral virtue, wouldn't it be logical for him to join the criminal underworld and become the leader of an organized crime group? What's up with his peculiar obsessions of fighting for the sake of fighting? The manga doesn't give us a detailed answer. Ryo simply rejected the offer because he doesn't want to work for a monkey. Here we see once again how the manga stopped Ryo from whitewashing his past deed. His reason for rejection is hasty and self-serving. Just because he's fighting a villain, that doesn't mean his motive is the righteous one. Going back to the story, Goku of course doesn't take his answer lightly. So Ryo finds himself being overpowered, a mere child in front of the Monkey King. Hope is all lost, death is what awaits. But just like his previous fight, a pivotal change occurs. He suddenly finds an opening to strike. And more than anything, he breaks his mask. Then the most bizarre thing happens. After his face has been exposed, he backs off and disengages completely. Here we see the strangest ending to a fight. Goku jumps off the cliff and ends his life. The fight is over just like that. One strong counterattack and a broken mask. It's very different from how other villains choose to end their lives. When other villains end their lives, they're usually confronted by the conscience to rectify their mistakes. In addition, Ryo defeats an actual evil person, but everything felt so empty at the end. It is as if Ryo didn't achieve anything. The manga doesn't give you the satisfaction of overcoming a great odds, so that no hero can be born. Though, to be fair, I've omitted a few details on the fight. The truth is even much more hollow. When Goku's face was exposed, he told Ryo his mother caused him to have this ugly face. She lets him be engulfed by fire so that she can survive. This is another familial trauma that sounds all too familiar. Another social outcast who chose to do crime in order to survive. With these informations in mind, I would like to reveal the one small detail I omitted early on in the fight. Ryo, who is known to fight shamelessly, fights Goku so as to fight back. Goku reacts to this by saying, "Your fighting style has no grace. You even bite in order to survive." Goku, the man who wants to control the underworld, is talking about fighting with dignity. Someone who is frankly, physically, and mentally ugly is looking down on Ryo. This is why when he was jumping off the cliff, he said, "Your face changes when you are fighting a dangerous enemy. It becomes uglier than mine. Ryonarushima, until the end of your life, you will show off a distorted and ugly face that reflects your heart." This is why I think Shamo is so brilliant. It subverts the usual way of storytelling. Goku kills himself not to redeem himself like other villains, but to take away the chance for Ryo to exonerate himself. He's trying to say, "I might be ugly, but after seeing you face to face, even I would not want to live in a world where you exist."